individuals. So my name is Rodney Charles, Vice President of the African Artists Association. The other voice you hear here is Francis Onelum, who's the President of the African Artists Association. And we're honored to be able to have this conversation today with Kunle Afolayan. Is
He's
the
in.
is he
Hi,
in?
Kunle. Thanks for joining us. Yeah,
Hey
he's in here.
guys,
You see him?
Kunle, I cannot see you as yet. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do.
really? I'm seeing myself.
I see you now. Yes, yes, yes. Excuse my old eyes, Kunle. Um, so thank you so much for joining us today, Kunle. We really appreciate you. And I'd like to actually start our conversation, if you wouldn't mind, Kunle, by doing something that I think is really important, certainly for me personally, and also for the African Artists Association. I want to thank you for the work that you continually have been putting forth. I want to also thank you because I understand that the work that you do and the trajectory that you've built has not been an easy task. For an individual who singularly writes or directs or produces or acts, any of those singular areas are quite daunting and terribly, terribly challenging. So I understand the level of work that goes into this and the price that we pay behind the scenes, whether it's with in terms of our personal life and our health, which is something that I've come to understand we don't talk about much within our space. And when I say health, I mean both our physical health and our mental health. So Kunle, for the work that you have continually done, I would absolutely like to acknowledge our gratitude as a collective here today and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate it.
Of
Thanks.
course, of course. Now, it would be hard to talk about all this work that you're doing without sort of, I'd like to, if you would, indulge me by getting a sense of where did you come from, Kunle? Because we're looking at, and for those on the chat who may not know, several of Kunle's films are available on Netflix and other channels. You do searches, you will be able to find his work. He is one of Nigeria's most prolific filmmakers. As I've mentioned, writer, director, producer, actor, all of the above, and much more, which we are going to get into today. So, Kunle, how
Yeah.
did you come to this industry, my brother? How did you find your way into making film? Was there an influence in your background? How did you come to this profession?
Okay, well, first I would like to say thank you to everyone here, and thank you to my brother for inviting me to be part of this. I think this is long overdue because we've been talking about this for years. Um, Look, I think I'm born to do this, besides being born into it. Small background, my father was a filmmaker, one of the first pioneers of film in Nigeria. He made his first feature film in 1978. But before then, he featured in Dr. Olabalogun's film in 1976, titled, Ajani Ogun. And then he made his film in 1978, titled Ija Ominira, meaning Fight for Freedom. Um, Fast forward, my father passed in 1996. And in 96, I don't think I was sure about what I wanted to do or where I wanted to be, but I really love film because growing up on film sets and all, even though my father, was completely against us towing the same kind of path, because he would say to you, look, there's no money in film, especially in Africa. They all were into it because, it gives them fulfillment. It was all about passion, because the kind of structure that, Hollywood or England or Europe runs is different, completely different from what the Anglophone Africa runs. For example, the Francophone Africa get a lot of funding from Europe, from France, from Germany, from Belgium. But Nigerian filmmakers were using their own money, to make films. So it was labor of love. So I grew up seeing all of this. And at some point, I thought, look, especially after my father passed. I thought there's something I have that, I should, contribute to that space. And that was how I started. I approached a few filmmakers like the legendary Tunde Kelani and Tadio Gidon. And Tunde Kelani, I remember in 1997, said to me, when I went to him, I said, "Sir, I want to make film." And he said to me, "Do you think filmmaking is an hereditary?" Like, what do you even know about film? And he said, "Look, you have to study, you have to learn, you have to work. It's like you're trying to be an engineer." And from there, the quest, continue. And I started as an actor. And at some point, I felt I was ready to, like, make films. And I made my first film, Irapada, meaning redemption, in 2006. And it got selected at the London Film Festival. It got selected at the PAF, Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles. And I was there to attend. And, I met Ayuko and the rest, Jimmy. And then I was in London Film Festival and I met quite a number. And from there, that was how the journey started.
Indeed. Now, so you got some advice very early on about the
Yeah,
necessity to educate yourself in that
yeah,
space. Can we speak a little bit about your journey in terms of the education? Because obviously you'd spent some time on set, but let
yes.
us know what your technical education looked like.
Okay, so I studied business administration. And then I started working in the bank. I worked in the bank from 1998 to 2004. But whilst in the bank, I was acting, I was doing acting on the side. But I wasn't completely fulfilled because I knew. But sometimes I'll get to the office and I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't think I belong here because, I wanted to tell stories. Uh, my first desire was not to be an actor. It was to be a filmmaker because I wanted to tell stories. But then acting fell on my lap, especially because to Nekelani advice. And then I did a bit of that here and there. But so from there, when I resigned from the back in 2004, I went to New York Film Academy in London and I studied digital filmmaking, for a few months. And then as soon as I was done, I left in 2005 and I registered Golden Effects, Pictures. And that was the parent company. Now we have Cap Film, Cap Motion Picture, Cap Academy, Cap this, that, but the parent company was, sister company, but it was Golden Effects, which we registered in 2005. And I've done, growing up, I didn't learn much other than I just saw the kind of discipline that was required on film set if you want to do it right. Because I remember that my father, whenever they're filming, they usually typically will have minimum of 200 people on set. And they'll be there for like 6 weeks or more, 2 months sometime. And you will see how coordinated, how disciplined, everybody, were. So these are some of the things. And then from age 14, my father would send me with his films because these films were mastered in 16 millimeter reels.
Okay.
And I'll take, and some people will come and book the film, and then they'll go and show them in theaters and in schools, and in halls in different part of West Africa. And and someone needs to go with the reels so that when they're done filming, you bring it back. And
Absolutely.
from age 14, my father will ask that I follow them and I'll carry those reels. Each title is in 3 reels, and you carry it, and then you go with them. I used to go to Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, take the coastline and go on a journey with these guys and come back. And through that, I learned to run the 16 millimeter projector. I learned to do like ticketing, the business of film. I learned to man the gate. I learned to do, then we call it propaganda, but it's called publicity, where, you put megaphone on the vehicle, you put posters on the vehicle, and you go around town making noise, calling people to come and see the film. So I did all of that, growing up before I then, moved into the creativity, part of things.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kunle, because I think it's necessary to understand that you had a financial, a business, and a first-hand distribution, or shall we say, exhibition
Yeah,
history before you even came to picking up the camera and creating your own stories. I think this is
yeah.
vital, and I don't want to skip over that because ultimately we have so many people in our community who want to tell stories and approach it from the artistic and the creative viewpoint, which is fine. However, I like that you've underscored these other areas because ultimately they are vitally important. And our ongoing conversation today will reveal more of that. Can you speak to your education at film school? For example, and this is the key question that I have here. Was it something that you feel is invaluable and it is your advice to filmmakers that you should go to film school, that it is a prerequisite to being able to understand the industry, or is it not so vital in your opinion?
Okay, in my opinion, I would say um, no knowledge is lost. You know, um, I remember in my class, I was the only black guy. So whenever it is we're learning hands on camera, I'm always the reference point because they will use me to light how to light a black guy.
Yeah.
And all of that. And oftentimes I've Googled like names of my classmates, those that I was in class with.
Mhm.
And I know there was a guy called Trevor who was much older than all of us and who was already doing something in the television space. And there's Einat who is from Israel. But aside those two, to the glory of God, I think I'm doing exceptionally well, even though I was the only black guy in the class. What I learned from school really was not the art of filmmaking.
Okay.
Um, I think the art of filmmaking really is a gift, that you have to possess as a human being, and that is what pushes you to want to like break boundaries. But the communal gathering and interaction and all of that were things that I feel helped, whilst I was, and up till now, it has helped me to like, learn to deal with, like other people.
Right.
Um, Also, some of the basic, of course, we learned a bit of everything in school, editing and all. But I up till now, editing is not something that I like to, I have my editors, but most of the time they cannot edit without me, because I'm the storyteller, right? So I would not say it's invaluable, but I'll say some people are naturally gifted. Um, I've listened to, submissions of the likes of Quentin Tarantino and the rest, even Tom Cruise and the rest about film school and all. For me, you either have it or you don't have it. I know people who went to film school and they did degree, they did masters, but they can't tell a short story to save their life. But film is not like, oh, I know a bit of it. No, film is either I know it or you don't know it. Right?
Right.
Exactly. So that's my opinion, really. But I think, like I said, no, if you go into school who had something to you, you're gonna meet people, and these might be people who's gonna like collaborate with you in the future, and then you guys would then like do no, I mean, and A tree cannot make a forest. So in making film, you need collaboration. You need a lot of people around you. So that could be what the essence of going to school will serve. But in terms of, like, for example, directing, you must have it. No matter, you can read everything and reference everybody's works, but you must have something different to add. That's my take.
You've mentioned the word collaboration quite a bit,
Yes.
and I am also of the school of thought that filmmaking is highly a collaborative art. I'm curious to know, you mentioned that you went to school in London, um, and when you were at film school, you were the only black person in your class.
Yeah.
I'm curious to kind of get a sense of how this played into one, learning a very European style of cinema, be that European American, and also the cultural takeaways that you left there with. Were there stark differences between what you had experienced growing up in Nigeria versus what you were learning in London? And we are going to delve deeply into the cultural aspects as we move on, because this is something that is so pertinent and so valuable within your cinema that let's start with this question of the difference that you saw whilst at film school.
Okay, so you know, these days I mentor a lot of young people, and they'll come to me and say, "Look, I want to go to film school. Do you think I should go abroad or not? Do you think?" And my question to them will be, "What exactly do you want to learn? Which area do you want to focus? If what you want to learn is hands-on camera, lighting, the key technical part of filmmaking, I'll say if you can afford it, go abroad. It's important. You learn so much. But really, if what you want to learn is the different styles of telling stories, what determine or what inform, good production value. What's it called? What if you're telling an African story? What differentiate a production design, from African perspective, from the European or American perspective? If you want to do, especially things in the art department, I've seen a lot of films where Nigeria is represented, and I'm always like, can't they just call somebody who's Nigerian and so they can get this thing right? A few years ago, there was a big film that was shot in Nigeria, and one of my key crew member who, we so rest in peace, he was on that set, and they were gonna portray. They wanted to do a wedding, and 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 this was during war, in Nigeria, and they baked this big cake, and they had diamond ring, and and this was designed by the production designer that was brought in, who is not into the culture, and and then the key guy, the Nigerian, who is like an assistant production designer, then said, "Look, if you're gonna fire me today, you can, but let me just quickly say this. I was there during, war, and it is impossible that anybody would have been able to bake or have access to this kind of diamond ring, So I think it's important that we don't, misrepresent, the period and all of that. And well, for some good reason, they listen and all of that was checked. So my take is, if you're going to film school and what you want to learn really is the technicalities, um, I think it's worth it. But if what you're trying to learn is the art of storytelling, I think you can do this, um, one on your own by interning on, several, film sets. It really doesn't have to be, productions that are only set in Nigeria or in Africa. If you have the opportunity to go out, it's also key. But um, but if your focus is,
Can I interrupt you for just a second,
yeah,
please? Uh, I think it's Ade Kunle. Can you mute your microphone, please? Because I can hear you talking and the background noise. I'm sorry. Please do
no, no,
continue, Kunle.
okay, all right. So for me, it depends on what you're looking to learn. If you want to learn about, I cannot tell a Western story more than the Westerners. If I'm given the opportunity to direct, okay, let, let me just reference this awkward situation. After Irapada, which was my first film, in 2007, I was invited to come and collaborate and direct a film set in the United States. Now, this film is by the producer, I think she's called Catherine Sullivan, and she's only seen the Rapada. And then they reached out to me, and they were to shoot in Vizcaya Museum in Miami and some scenes in Chicago and all of that. So when they reached out, I saw like images of the museum, and I'm like, oh, I would love to film here. So they sent me the script, and I read the script, and I didn't understand it. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's because my English is not so great. So uh, let me like pass it to someone else to read. And the few people who read the script said this person must be crazy, like they don't get it. So I reached out to the person who connected us, Kit Shiri, and I said, brother, I've read the script, but I don't understand it. Is it possible that I have a meeting with Catherine, and maybe if we have one-on-one chat? Then they invited me to the UK, and then she came from the US, and we sat and we talked, and then she showed me a showreel. And that was the first time I got to know that there was anything called installation film.
Right.
And so this is pure poetry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and when I saw that, I called Keith and I said, bro, I'm not doing this because I don't understand it.
Right.
I said, no, you can't do that. You got nothing to lose. They're gonna pay you $40,000. This was 2007.
Yeah.
18 years ago.
Hmm.
And I said, yeah, but I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. And he said, don't worry, just. Then I thought about it. I said, okay. Then I went back to the producer and I said, look, can I do an adaptation of this story, like the way I understood it? And then she said, oh, yeah, why not? That would be like like a twist to the entire thing. Then I got like my team from Nigeria and we tried to, but one of them was um, uh, granted visa. And we shot this film. It's titled Triangle of Need, you know,
Hmm.
and we shot it. And it was all like, of course, Western guys, Western story. But my brother, if today you ask me what the film is about, I don't think I can tell you what it was about. But we premiered in like 5 cities, in Liverpool, in Liverpool, in Paris, in what's that place in Germany? Like different places.
Right.
And I'll be but it's not something I'm proud of because I really can. If you ask me to explain, I really can explain what I did.
Right.
Now I'll do it better because of the years of experience and because I've dealt with more difficult stories and stuff. So if there's an opportunity to go to a film school to learn the technical side, I'll say yes. But if you're looking at telling your own kind of stories, I think you can get a whole lot of that done at home.
Indeed. Very clear. I want to just make that clear because you spoke about installation film, and I know that we have a lot of people listening in from different parts of the world. So essentially, what we're talking about here is in Europe in particular, there's a lot of funding available and institutions that exist that require an artistic rendition of something cinematic that goes into various foundations, museums, and even theaters. But essentially, it doesn't have to have the narrative structure of your conventional cinema piece. And
Yeah.
so one can imagine that a lot of these places do have a lot of money. And to give an
Yes.
example, we might say that someone like uh, I'm trying to Steve McQueen, that's the name
Yes.
I'm thinking of, would have come from that sort of background. Now, most of us would know Steve McQueen as 12 Years a Slave or his other films, but ultimately he comes from a very artistic rendition of cinema. And
Mm.
that's quite its own thing, as you say. Kunle, I am so nervous about time because you have there's so much I want to get into with you here, man, that and I'm not going to miss out on everything. So let's just get into this. Culture. I can't, no one can look at one of your films without cultural representation being at the epicenter. That is another reason that I want to give you your flowers and say thank you, because one gets to learn about Nigerian culture in particular, and maybe even specifics to do with certain groups within Nigeria. So this is valuable. This is also valuable from the perspective of I attend a lot of film festivals and other things of this nature, and I see other cultures continually being represented in a holistic fashion. There is also, just to make this point, when I look at things like whether it's American cinema, which prioritizes the we are the best militarization kind of perspective, whether it's East Asia with the honor and the traditions that they handle their own storytelling with, or even Southeast Asia, or South Asia, I should say, India, etc. And I'd like to speak to you about what is your governing philosophy or what is your principle that guides you when it comes to your storytelling?
Thank you very much for that question. You've pretty much answered that question. For me, I'm very big on culture. And when I mean culture, look, I see a lot of decadence in our society today. And I'll tie to the fact that we're beginning to lose, the real essence of who we are, as a people. And growing up, we grew up on epic films done in native languages, and in this age and time, and then I remember that before you watch any film, or as soon as you're done watching a film with your family, the first question they will ask is, "What have you learned from the film?" In fact, they will say, we will say like, "What did you teach you? What did the film teach you?" That is how our parents would typically put it. And I felt that, look, I think the onus rests on me, one, to preserve that culture, and also to educate with that culture, and then attain on the side. So whenever it is I'm trying to tell a story, the first thing that comes to mind is in the nearest future or in years to come,
Mhm.
when the unborn generation, when they see this film, what are they gonna take away from it? Aside the fact that they will laugh, or they could have reflection, but what else? And when you're talking about culture, you're talking about language, you're talking about lifestyle, you're talking about morals, you're talking about who you are, and no matter what genre of film,
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you again.
yeah,
Is that Bambas? Can you silence your phone, please? And can we all just ensure that our phones are muted, please? Because this is a valuable conversation that most of us have tuned in to benefit from. Thank you, Kunle. Please continue. Sorry about
yeah, yeah, it's okay. So the first thing, for example, I did a film titled Mokalik, And Mechanic was on Netflix for a while, and now it's on Capstream on YouTube, which is our own channel.
Okay.
What informed Mechanic? It was because, I collect vintage cars and I was trying to restore, the new one that I got. And I wanted to make sure that it was well restored. So in the morning, I'll go to this mechanic workshop where you have different departments. You have the panel beaters, you have the painters, you have the, rewires, you have, like the core mechanic and all, you have the restaurant and everything. And I'll go there in the morning and I'll sit and I'll see how people relate and all. And I felt this is so organic, I think I can, but most importantly, there are two elements that actually got me hooked. One is once I get there in the morning, I sit on the side and the sun will rise from my front, and by evening it's going to be down on the side,
Right.
and the entire floor is like greasy, is gray like oil, but then it is an area where a filmmaker, any sensible filmmaker, will avoid because it's a traffic zone.
Right.
So every 2-3 minutes there is a plane going, and that definitely will ruin, your sound, your audio and all. But that gave me like that was like, a challenge for me. And 2 days of a week or two after, my son, then I think he was like 12, he was on holiday. And I said to him, instead of sitting at home watching, some game, you're going to enroll in this mechanic workshop, and I took him there, and the first day he cried, but after I got used to it. But the point is, I made a film that inspired me to make a film. And this wasn't, it didn't, writing the story didn't take forever. And I called Tunde Babalala, who was one of the, most amazing writers we have around. And he wrote a story and we put it together and we shot a film, and the film was all over the place. So my point is, I love to use what we have available in terms of, especially where people are not paying attention. I like to concentrate on that, the values that people are not, and this has really worked for me. Anikulapo is one of the commissioned film by Netflix. This was done in Yoruba 100%, and Anikulapo in 2022 ranked #1 most watched film globally on Netflix. So #1 foreign language film, most watched all over the world. And for me, that sort of like, stamped what I've always believed in, to say, I cannot shoot gun more than the Americans. I cannot do car racing, more than, the West. But then I can make stones, I can do magic with stones, and then it brings fire. I can, create organic stuff that the rest of the world will learn from. I can sell my language and my culture, and, from costumes, to language. Look at what the Koreans are doing. I remember when I started South Korea, when I started, I was talking to the legend Tunde Kelani, and I said, TK, you need to start watching Korean series. And one day he called me and he said, Kunle, you know what these people are doing? They are selling their literature. He said, this is their literature. And I'll be watching Korean series and I'll be crying. I'm a filmmaker. I know it's all make believe, but then I watched a film, Mr. Nice Guy, and I went on my phone and I'm like, I was Googling Japan, like, how cruel can Japan be? And I was at that time doing something with Canon, and I'm like, and whenever I see it, and I'm always referring to the film, what I was made to believe in the film. So that I believe that is what we should do beyond trying to make money and selling, selling content. We should also have conscience to say, beyond putting things on TV, tomorrow, what will people say about you other than, oh, you make great films that are interesting? Will you be remembered for other values? And that is very important to me. And that is why Yoruba or Nigerian culture, things that African culture, I carry it on my head like my life, and really my life depends on it because nobody can take that away from me.
Kunle, that you've touched on so many things there. Firstly, I want to say congratulations in terms of your film and the reach that it had of being the #1 in Netflix internationally. That is no small thing. And I know you're a very humble man. You mention it, but I really want to underscore this in terms of just having an understanding of who we're speaking to today. This is not an easy thing to achieve. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The I want to get this understanding of culture that you shared, and I love the example that you give of watching a film and then being asked, "What did you learn from this?" Because that's how I grew up. And I now feel that I'm in a very, very small minority because no one tends to mention this. So I'm so happy to hear you mention that film still can have and does have a purpose. Now, I'd like to speak using that lens of culture, of purpose,
Yeah.
etc. Can we expand that to speak of something that you were at the epicenter of, which is loosely called Nollywood? And I'm going back to the foundation and that wave that created such a momentum that I clearly remember whilst attending different international film festivals and film markets. Suddenly, in a space where Africans did not historically exist, except for maybe South Africa as a service provider, not as a filmmaking country. But suddenly there was this buzz about this dynamic, resonant market with original stories, etc. So that was amazing and still continues to be a very pivotal and significant point in history. I'd like you to talk to us about what happened during that period, what's happening now, and ultimately, what was the value system, culturally and other words, and otherwise, that was existing in that space, and how do you see it today?
Okay. Thank you for that question. First, I'm going to take you back to like the 70s, right? In the 70s, 60s, 70s, of course, there were people who got, British would come make propaganda film, and these films will be showed, like in, outdoor gatherings and stuff. The likes of Professor Wale Soyinka did Kongi Harvest, and a few other people did film. Now there's a man, great man called Dr. Olabalogun, who came to Nigeria from France, and he made a few films, and these films weren't going anywhere. And then he made Ajani Ogun, which featured my father, and then boom, everything just changed. Before then, the likes of my father, Dr. Hubert Ogunde, they were all doing traveling theater, and they will go from one place to they travel even to America, Australia, and all of these places doing stage plays. But when Dr. Labalogo introduced them to film, then my father was the first to like catch the bug, and then 2 years after he made his film, and then he introduced the rest of his colleagues. Yorubas are big on like entertainment. We were always, like in cinemas, and there were community cinemas at that time. But in the late 80s, there was something we call austerity, is inflation, pretty much. And dollar went from $1 to naira, went to maybe like 10, 20, naira to $1. And people couldn't afford to shoot on celluloid anymore. Fast forward, video format came, and some of the guys in television embraced the video format, and they started telling stories in 5 days, in 3 days. But guess what? They will compromise on the technicalities and focus on their stories. And that went boom. But the real professional filmmakers, completely blocked or chose to see what we're doing as inferior and something that will not, stand the test of time. To a point, they're right. But between then and early 2000, those style of films made their impact.
Yes.
And people in New York, if I on Flatbush in New York, you will see bootlegs of all of these films everywhere.
Yeah.
If you travel to other part of Africa, people are, once you say I'm a Nigerian, instead they say Igwe, or they call you some of the characters' names in some of the films that they have seen. So these films are everywhere in Nigeria, in Africa, and among Africans in diaspora and Caribbeans.
Mm.
Now in early 2000, that changed because there was limit to how far those films could travel. They cannot have good premiere at festivals. They're not really being studied, and all. So when I started, I saw where we were coming from through the lenses of the likes of my father and Iba Togunde and the rest. And I saw where we are, where we were, which was Nollywood, core Nollywood. And I saw films like Mortal Inheritance, like Hostages. And I'm like, okay, I can bridge this gap. How do I do that? I decided that I'm going to improve on the technicalities of those films, but still maintain the authenticity of the stories. And then I made my first film, and that was how the film could get to London Film Festival. But even at that, I was always saying to myself, I don't want to be a festival rat. So I don't want to be doing films that all I do is go to jump from one festival to the other. No, I want to be rich. I want to live like they live in Beverly Hills. I said that from the beginning, and to the glory of God, that is the life I live now, even here, right? But what got me there really is the authenticity of the stories and the film, and from then something started. I remember I was invited to BFI when I did Phone Swap, and there was something they call Odyssey's film. Odyssey was with Wale Ojo, because Wale was in Phone Swap. And Wale started something called New Nollywood, the New Nollywood. All right. And that era, people started making really high quality film. I know that, there was Tango with Me by Mahmoud Ali Balogun. There was, I think Genevieve did a film, and then there were a couple of films. And that took us, that period for another 10 years. We were making that kind of high quality films that were really going out. But then the likes of Netflix and Amazon and the rest came, and the narrative changed again. You see, the thing is, and I would like to encourage all our brothers here. I know that most of us are in the US, and we're really struggling to make that break and all. Look, I love this me. I love this country, so I cannot even leave. I can only come out and play. Then I return here. The honest truth is, all that I have achieved are things that I did here. Most of the funding that I used for more than 2 decades are funds that I got from here, until the likes of Netflix came. And then they saw that, oh, you have a pedigree. And they're like, oh, we can tap into your pedigree. And then from, okay, give us your catalog, to, okay, can we do a slate? So after Anikulapo, became a success, Netflix then came and said, oh, we remember you said you wanted to make it a series, you still want to do that? And I said, yes, why not? But this was after, because with Anikulapo, it was 3 film slates. All right. I know a lot of people will come and say, how much were you paid? Were you paid $10 million? That's not what matters. What matters is they gave you 3 slates. That means they're giving you a job for like 3 years, because we're meant to submit one film in a year. And so we did a Swallow first, which is an adaptation of Sefiata's film about drug peddling. And then we did Anikulapo, and then we did Ijobo. Whilst we were trying to complete one, they came back to me and said, look, we have this Christmas film we want to do, and we know there's no time, but we trust that you can deliver. And then we made a film for them called Niger Christmas, which is on Netflix up till now, and it's their original, film. And after all of that was done, they then said, do you want to do the Anikolapo series? Then we did the season one, which is titled, Rise of the Spectre. It's called Anikolapo Rise of the Spectre. And that was released and it was a success. And they're like, do you want to do season two? And my brother, now, as we speak, we have shot season 2 and 3, and we're in post-production and it's gonna come out. So for me, what more can you ask for? We're busy, we're working. And again, we're given free hands to tell our own stories. This is not grant, it's business. It's like how studio works. But then most of these guys, if they believe in you and they think you can deliver, they won't question you much. A lot of people will come and say, oh, no, they want me to change the story to this. They hardly would do that with me because, there's mutual respect, and all of that. So my advice to a lot of our people will be, we shouldn't get carried away. We can be abroad and then we compete. We try to compete in this like big zone where we're neither here nor there. But if you sell your culture the way you should, and they feel that they cannot get it anywhere else, you'll be a champion.
Yep.
Right? And that has changed in Nigeria. There are more than 10 to 15 producers who are doing like big things with the streamers, and that has sort of changed, the entire narrative. Yeah.
So I'd like to speak a little bit because I want to kind of flesh out what you've pointed out. Thank you, firstly, for the kind of overview of the history of that period. I know there's much more there and it's a complex situation, but that gives a clear overview at least. I'd like to touch upon a couple things. One being really what you spoke about, and a few years ago, Netflix and other streamers were throwing this phrase around, local for global.
Global.
So, which basically means to everyone listening that it's about specificity of story to your particular, it could be region and locality. It could also be specificity of your own experience. And they utilize that when it comes to things like gender stories and all these sorts of things. So it's localized, very specific in its intention, much like using Yoruba language. That is specific. But it has a dynamic resonance internationally. And we see this also with Korean films and other parts of the world. So thank you for raising that and for being a living testimony and proof that this works. Let's talk now about financing, utilizing the access point of the Netflix conversation. Because here's the challenge that continually comes up with that space in this regard. It felt as though Nigeria, during the heyday of Nollywood, was able to generate financing for films, irrespective as to how we feel about the quality at the time. They were able to generate financing for cinema to tell our stories.
Yeah.
Something has transpired where now we're back to waiting on Western governance and financing to be able to tell our stories. Now that is my narrative, so I'm not gonna throw you under the bus with that. But what I will say is this, or my question to you rather, would really be this. What is the potential for films made at the qualitative scale that you tell stories? You're telling epics about empires and sort of cultures and intersection with history. You're doing those films as well as dramas, etc. What is the potential of getting these films made in Nigeria specifically, or maybe even in terms of other parts of the African continent, without the involvement of external financing mechanisms, be that from America or Europe or elsewhere? How are we looking on the continent, Kunle?
Okay, I've done that before. I did a film titled The CEO, and the CEO featured Angelique Kidjo, and we filmed in like 4 or 5 countries. We filmed in Nigeria, we filmed in Nairobi, we filmed South Africa, we filmed Morocco, and we filmed in France. And we have actors from Cote d'Ivoire, Angelique Kidjo representing Benin, with Nico Panaggio from South Africa, Peter King from Kenya, Aliam from Morocco. So I wanted to do a Pan-African film. And, we're always talking about co-production treaty.
Yes.
And people will say, you can't do anything if you don't have co-production treaty with all these other countries.
Kunle, let me just demystify what for those who don't know, a co-production treaty is an official co-production treaty is an agreement that different international governments have with each other to facilitate trade in the film and entertainment industry. By definition, Britain and Germany, for example, have a co-production treaty. So if as a British filmmaker or even as a German resident, I wish to make a film with someone in one of those countries, there is a tried, tested series of rules and regulations that make it easier for me to make those films. America has no official co-production treaty, but because it has so much money and so many stars, they can work with other countries. The African continent, with the exception of maybe South Africa up until recently, didn't have official co-production treaties, which meant that getting money back and forth and individuals to work together was a problem. Sorry about that interruption, Kunle.
No, it's okay. Thank you for actually, shedding the tears. Shedding light on that. Because for many years I didn't understand what treaty was. The co-production treaty was because I hear these at forums and and they will say, "Oh, we can't make film because we don't." And I'm like, "Why can't you make film? Just look for another filmmaker who share the same kind of thing. Why do you need government? So that was my approach. And I'm always looking for private funds, like, especially by selling values and services to organizations, and then I incorporate them in the film. So with the CEO, what we did was we already had, because the idea was, I'm like, I want to do a Pan-African film where I bring actors from different Africa and I put them in one space, and I have each one represent. First, the original motive was because of distribution, because I'm like, oh, if I have staff from Morocco and I have from, I can break into the market. Eventually, it didn't work that way. But what we managed to achieve was, when the story was ready, luckily, I met Air France at Air France team in Paris at Nollywood Week, film festival. And they're like, "Oh, Mr. Afolayan, we've been trying to reach you to see what we can do together." And we got back to Nigeria. We had a meeting with the actor Devantala. He was the commercial director. And from that conversation, everything changed. So from trying to partner on the film. They made me an ambassador, and then a whole lot of things fell in. And I looked at some of the scenes in the film, and then we had to rewrite to accommodate the brand. And this just changed the entire thing. I have never accessed European grants in my life, even up till now. I've never accessed free funds from anywhere to make film. It's always been either sponsorship and partnership money. And these are tied to values and deliverables, and I will still try as much as possible to ensure that, I don't compromise on my original story. I've turned down a lot of people because they want to put some money, like from product point of view, in your film. Then they want you to just change. If I'm not comfortable with it, or if I think it's going to affect, how I want to tell my story, I turn down those kind of things. Fast forward, we made the CEO, and the CEO premiered. We had our first premiere on the plane, flying 200 and something people from Lagos to Paris, and turning the entire airport to a theater, and this was because of the partnership.
Okay, hold on just 1 minute. Hold on just 1 minute.
Yeah.
This really, I don't like to interrupt individuals when I'm having these conversations, but this bears underscoring, man. This is not normal. So
No.
let me just I'm going for my own edification. You were able to pull different people from different parts of Africa, all resonant in their different territories, like Angelique
Yes.
Joe from Benin, etc., as you said. You put them together in a project that you and your colleague created, and
Yes.
then were able to leverage, I'm hearing Air France, but essentially different European and global partnerships in
Yes.
order to be able to bring an access point to your cultural framework and to their product, which they need, especially with the numbers in terms of Nigeria being the most populous nation on the African continent. So what we're talking about here, and this is why I paused you just to underscore this, we have to understand as a people what we represent in monetary terms. I think it's particularly sexy, that's the word I use, that you were able to make it brand integrated to the degree that you were able to premiere your film backed by Air France on a plane with talent. That is phenomenal, and a case study or an entry point to case studies that we should further develop on in terms of brand associated filmmaking, which is now becoming dominant because of the lack of revenue generation since the streamers took over, and there is no longer the theatrical, the DVD, all these various ancillary usages. So I just wanted to pause to underscore all of this. Well done, my brother. That's amazing. That's such a great
Thank
story.
you.
Please
Thank you.
continue.
You see, from that partnership with Air France, in that same film, we also got Peugeot as partners.
Yeah, the
And
car company.
Peugeot, at the end of the show, gave me their latest, 508 Peugeot at that time, because we featured the car in a very, like, in the film, and then they made me an ambassador as well. And look, the I have never, and I didn't work with any ad agency. There wasn't any external representation of any sort. All the deals, all the negotiation, all the interactions was done by myself and my partner, by the name Sheon Shoyinka. And we attended, the meetings together. I'm always saying to people that you don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to. But if you have the gift, because sometimes it is you that the people want to see. It is you. Sometimes you're even misrepresented, and then you don't get a job. Fast forward, we made this film. We we had a premiere. We shut down the Nigerian airport. We branded everywhere, red carpet, or we took a DJ to the boarding gate. And on the flight to Paris, we showed the film. We did curtain call where all the stars move from one cabin of the plane to the other, interacting with, the passengers, 200 and something, people. And then we got to Paris and then did another big premiere and all. And then people came back like the third or fourth day. Again, I said primarily I was looking to break into other African countries in terms of distribution. That didn't happen because I realized that the other African countries didn't have as much cinemas. The only country with large number of cinemas is South Africa. And we still couldn't break, into that. But was the film a success? Did we, recoup our investment and all? We did. Again, before we started shooting, I took loan from Bank of Industry. I've always had to take loan. Some people, I know some of our brothers and filmmakers from different part of the world who don't like to take a risk. So they always will wait for grants, and that could take 5 years. You're developing one film for 5 years, and you're still waiting for this free fund. That is why people don't. I don't know how many years do we actually have, on this earth to live actively. So I'll always say to people, surround yourself with the right team. In our case, we make one film, whatever it is we make, we put it on the other one, and then it kept expanding. And right now, we could stand on our own. The second film I did like that is Citation. And with Citation, we filmed Citation in Nigeria, Senegal, Cape Verde, and it's got Jimmy, Jean-Louis, Temi Otedola, a lot of and there wasn't. I remember that I belong to this WhatsApp group, just like we have the African, and I've done things a lot with the French, and I'm always like, I would like to do things with the Portuguese African countries. And I'm like, okay, where do we go? Oh, Guinea, we go Angola, or then I saw Cape Verde. I'm like, oh, okay, I like this island.
Yeah.
And then I also saw images from Dakar, from the point of no return, Gorée Island. Yep. And I'm like, I want to shoot in Gorée Island. And one day I just took like 5 of my team and I said, let's even go to Senegal and see the possibilities. And we went, and I have a few friends, Angel and some of them, and I'm like, would you like to be co-producer on this show? There wasn't treaty with government. There was no funding, external funding, even from those countries. But we're always looking for soft landing. Like, okay, if government is not doing anything with it, can we get rebate? Can we get no rebate? Rebate is tied to treaty. But can we get support from like hotels? Can we get support on equipment? We took some of our equipment, and then we were introduced to some nice people. There's a guy called what's his name again? I'll remember. And he supported us with hotel and stuff. But we made the film then we went to Cape Verde, met with the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and all of that. No treaty. Yeah. This was just moves, and from some people who are just passionate about telling stories, and we made the film, and Citation is still on Netflix, and it's doing so well, and it was well received, and we traveled, and screened all over the place. So my take is, look, if you don't get up and especially for the love of cinema, all right? The reason why, if Hollywood is making a film, they will tell us it's $100 million. Why? Because you have like 1,000 people who are to hand from that $100 million and who are not going to contribute much to that project. But they're on payroll, so they must. But here, because you have limited resources, like people will say, you have to cut your coat according to your cloth. All right. You don't, you can't just overspend because,
Yeah.
and then just look at, again, for CEO, I intentionally said I didn't want Moroccans who live in Hollywood. I
Mm,
didn't want um, South Africans who are in another country. I
right.
wanted actors who were known and respected in their own country, and that was why we did that kind of casting, and it worked. It worked for us.
Gotcha.
Look, in a way, you can't win all. If you want authenticity, then you have to. Um, for me, I would have weighed everything, and I would make sure that the story I'm telling will have universal appeal, and then at the end of the day, I'm fulfilled. With so whether you have co-production treaty or whether your
Mhm.
country has got co-production treaty or not, whether you're South African and KwaZulu Natal is
Yeah.
not giving you grants, or whether you're from what's it called, Kenya, and
Mhm.
you're not getting those. You don't wait. That is why Nigerians are different. We don't
Mhm.
like to wait.
Yeah.
If the grant is not coming, people find one way or the other to still fund their film. So back to like to what you're saying. Um, Most of the films that have been funded in Nigeria didn't get any foreign, grant from outside. There are a few. For example, there is a film that is just newly released. I think is it My Father's Sin? It's a co-production between the British and it premiered in Cannes,
Okay.
and it's such a good film, but the fund didn't come from Nigeria, right?
Hmm.
And that brings me to this very important, like aspect of things. I'm one of those who I'm always sad whenever it is that, like you submit a film, for My Father's Shadow. That's it. Yeah, that's, by the way, that's a brilliant film. But this film was made possible because it got the British funding, and a lot of support from outside. And the film is touring the world, right now. But
Hmm.
those kind of films might have, because it's doing well outside. Now every Nigeria is claiming that, oh, it is our film, even though we didn't fund it
Right.
directly. But the actors are Nigerian, the crew, most of the crew members, the director, the producer are Nigerian. So it's a thing of pride. But
Mm.
then there are films that are done locally with Nigeria funds that have also attained, such a, I mean, that kind of, stage, globally. So whether so before Netflix and Amazon, we were doing great things, and
Right.
our films are traveling. But what we didn't have was the international distribution. You're known in New York by Nigerians and Africans and Caribbeans,
Right.
but people didn't have access to our films beyond, and most of the films they're seeing are bootleg films because we didn't have, distribution framework that gets our film to those places.
Hmm.
But Netflix and Prime and all the on YouTube broke that entire thing. And that is why a Nigerian film, after Nicola, a couple of Nigerian films have also attained, number one most watched film globally. And these films were done here, funded here, and all of that. So we need to, I don't think we should narrow, we should completely focus on, grants and foreign funds. Like if they don't come, you're not going to work or you won't, no, you won't do anything.
Mm.
You will
Mm.
not do, again, I'll repeat, I have never accessed a foreign any foreign grant. I'm always looking at partnership with corporate organization, partnership with potential partners who sees value in what we do and they want to like key into it. We've done films where the October one is one of
Mhm.
my film that is most, that like really loved by people.
Right.
We got Toyota to partner with us on October 1. October 1 was set in 1960. As at 1960, we didn't have Toyota in Nigeria. But
Mm.
then they still agreed and they did things around the film. Even
Gotcha.
though we couldn't put the car in the film, but they were part of our press conference. They were part of the premieres. They were part of. We could do things
Yeah.
around the film, even if you cannot do within the film. So for me, look, the sky is so big, and a lot can be done.
Well, let me, on that note, let me ask you this, because you talked about the CEO, you assembled an international cast, you had international support. I want to go back to that concept because, as the members of the organization who know me know,
Yeah,
distribution is actually, Bimbo, can you please mute your microphone, please? And just anyone in the room, can please mute your microphone so we're not distracted. Thank you. I I think what is someone's still out. So what's really kind of interesting to me is you've mentioned being able to raise the financing, and many Nigerian films have gotten their financing out of Nigeria. I'm very interested in the distribution aspect of things. Let me give you the kind of framework that I'm utilizing here. Koreans have a thriving cinematic culture, which means that the Koreans don't necessarily need the American market. It is an amazing market to have, but they don't need it, and they can distribute in their home markets. Now, you touched upon part of the challenge with something like the CEO being that on the continent, we don't have sufficient cinemas. I will personally add to that that we don't necessarily own a lot of the cinemas that are there. They do not belong to us as Africans. So, by definition, there is another conversation to be had about how far, in fact, we are away from sustainability as a filmmaking culture as Africans. So that I'm not going to ask you to come up with an answer to, because you are doing something, and we're going to touch upon what you're doing as an ecosystem. We're going to come back to that, but I want to acknowledge the mention that you mentioned, like a couple of members and stuff, people like Jimmy Jean-Louis, who you work with on several occasions. I see people like Raz Adoti, the great actor,
yeah,
Nigerian
yeah.
actor, right here on the screen. And we have all these wonderful talents, etc. And I would I you've demonstrated this with the CEO, but I want to kind of have a clear understanding today in 2025 how you view the question of diaspora, because it feels as though you were using people like Jimmy, etc. Obviously, you seem open to it, but what do you think is the possibility of leveraging that diaspora today to be able to actually create a sustainable model of distribution, so we don't need anybody else who can potentially shut us down if they disagree with our politic or story mechanisms? What are your thoughts of how far we are away from that today?
Okay, look, the thing is, distribution now is technology, or is big on technology, right? And this is the determinant factor is funds, right? Um, why is everybody running to YouTube? It's because YouTube is open, and then you just go there, say you're over 18, open the page, and then you start putting stuff and you start monetizing. Um, is that the future? I don't know, but it is one of the available distribution platforms, and people are making, I know Nigerians who are making a lot of money from that platform. I remember when we opened Capstream and we're going to put our film, a lot of people came to me and said, you can't be putting that kind of big film on YouTube. They are not for YouTube. I mean, for people who are here, check Capstream. We have like 4 of our films there. We have the CEO is even there, Mokalik, all our old film, Figuring, Phone Swap, those films are there. And I'm like, look, these films have been around. They've gone through other distribution frameworks. So it's like you coming to VOD, which is, one of the alternatives when it comes to distribution. Can we, and I'm always saying in the continent, we have the numbers, but then we need one safe or two, three, four very safe platforms
Right.
where when you put your content, your content is safe there,
Hmm.
and then they have enough money to do publicity, and so that there will be return on investment.
And let me just add the caveat right there that they
Yes.
are hopefully African owned. Because
Yeah.
part of the problem that we're seeing now with YouTube, etc., is
Mhm.
like Africa Stream, which is one of the streaming platforms, have just been shut down, demonetized, and taken off most of the major social media platforms for
Uh,
speaking truth about African subjects and our condition. So I'm really specific about the
yeah.
conversation of distribution here. I'll let you continue.
So look, of recent, Moabutu, who is one of the big, producer and film entrepreneurs we have in Nigeria, just launched like an online distribution platform. One of the biggest distribution and exhibiting production company we have, Film One Group. They also just launched another platform. There was another one that was launched a few months ago. I'm gonna remember Sako. That's
Mhm.
another platform in Nigeria. So look, if we have, and this is good because you can choose where you want to put your film, and this is good for the industry. This is good for the diaspora as well. Um, if there's transparency, because what Netflix is typically complaining about is the fact that we don't have good internet here. So it limits the subscription. And I understand it,
Mhm.
right? But then on YouTube, you have like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people view, your content, in less than 1 week. Where are they getting the data from? Meaning most of them are probably not from Nigeria. Maybe they are, streaming from outside Nigeria. So I feel we need to come together. Like we need
Mhm.
to. There's no competition really because it's win-win for everyone. The
Absolutely.
most difficult part is look if everybody is opening streaming platforms, you need to like populate those platforms with good content. You need some exclusivity right to some content.
Okay.
And making good film is not cheap. So if you're gonna make films that will drive people, let's say you commission 10 big films,
Mhm.
and then people can exhaust that in 2 days.
Right.
And then what will be left? If you don't put other films in the next couple of weeks or days, people will move and the platform will die. So it's not enough that you have money to build a platform. You also have to be ready, to be able to build a catalog of films and then have some exclusivity, some right
Absolutely.
that you put on the platform. Another way, and this is just a quick one. Look, I follow these are African group, and I see a lot of people talking. I saw some people that have been brought to the platforms. And someone like us have tried, like in the past, to like invite some of our brothers, maybe like David, maybe like John and the rest of them. Um, I remember Jaimon Su and I were stuck in one place together for like 3 days, and we were talking about collaboration and stuff.
Mm.
But it's so difficult with the gatekeepers.
Yes.
It is so difficult. There are things that I remember I wanted to do at Nicolaco. David was one of the people that we were considering
Hmm.
because I've heard, I won't compromise on language, but I've heard him, and I think to a large extent, his Yoruba is decent enough. And if not, with technology now, a lot of things can be done. And I remember I rigged out, we wrote, we sent, stuff, and boom, nothing. I met John, and then later he was even interested in some of my father's classics, and we started a conversation. And at the end of the day, boom, gone. So I just wish that there are ways to like make them see.
Mm.
I know Hollywood is structured in a way, but I mean, Chiwetel has done things here. I mean, and I feel, what's it called? David has a production company even called Yoruba something.
Yoruba Saxon.
How come he's not done things here?
Yeah.
So I feel if we can like just it's an exception. I mean, like,
Uh,
um, just come home, look for this is not it's not gonna water down your brand because I think that is how they think, or maybe it's the agency, or maybe I don't know.
you,
But you
you,
can always say, I'm from here, I want to do stuff there, and then you do it.
you've opened a can of worms there, as we say, Kunle, when it comes to the gatekeeper conversation. Um, Two of the individuals you mentioned, I won't underscore which ones, I've been in conversations with concerning cinema also. Their people are notoriously difficult and what tends to happen in Hollywood specifically, and I think the same might be true when it comes to Europe with the likes of Omar Sy and people of that magnitude, the individuals who basically could help us turn our industry around, we no longer have access to. And that is by design. And unfortunately, it takes a very unique mindset, maybe a bit more like the Jimmy Jean Louis of the world, to be able to be still represented by one, arguably the biggest agency on the planet, and still be functioning within culture as well as within Hollywood. So that said, I have a question based on something that you raised, which is Capstream, which I love, and I've got my eye on the time, so I've really got to keep moving here. But Capstream, you've taken your content and you have transitioned it after it has been utilized in other windows by other
Yeah.
distributors. You've moved it to your own YouTube platform. I have a question. Is that, and without getting into numbers, but is that a valuable and viable way of handling content via the YouTube distribution model that you've utilized with Capstream?
Well, I think first it's non-exclusive. So if tomorrow there are two, three other four platforms that are interested in putting it, I can give it to them. So it becomes a multiple. Again, I would like to touch something just to enlighten people a little bit. You know, so if you say to people, "Oh, I did a Nicolaco for Netflix," and is there some people are not aware that you can sign different kind of deals. So when a film is called Netflix original or Netflix present, it doesn't mean that it is owned by Netflix. There are some films that are commissioned by Netflix and they are owned by Netflix in perpetuity.
Yeah.
But there are some that, like most of our own films, are co-production films.
Yes.
Where you guys, you tell them what the budget is, you put your own budget on the table, they bring budget. When the film is ready, you share rights. They can say, oh, we have it exclusively for 2 years. After 2 years, you can do VOD, you can do that, you can do airline, you can do all of that. And then after 4 years, it comes back to you in perpetuity. But there are also films that I know they've acquired and all of that they own, like in perpetuity. That is why you need, if you don't know how to do it, then get legal representation, from people who really have clear understanding of, how to negotiate deals, I mean, when it comes to content and copyright and all. I just thought to quickly, because people always think, oh, because it's Netflix original, whatever it is they pay you, that is all. No, you can still monetize once it's done, or once the rights to their exclusivity lapse. Then you can also explore other territory. I just thought to like quickly touch on that, because a lot of
And
people though, yeah.
and I'm glad you did, because that's vitally important that people
Mm,
understand that. That's part of what I try to push as part of my agenda, is the fact that yes, there are existing distribution
yeah.
agreements, and those agreements are there to be negotiated.
Yes.
So that is very important. Thank you for
Mm,
raising that point. I've got my eye on the time, and I want to still kind of try to fit in some questions here. But I do have another big question for you, because I would be very remiss if I did not deal with this.
um,
Can you speak to me, Kunle, about what appears to be a, a studio, a village, an empire that you have created? And I say that with in jest, but with a lot of love, and so proud of you, my brother, in regard to, please just, I won't do a bad job of describing what you've created, but let me just set it up in this way.
yeah.
You have come through a business background. You have gone to film school to learn an international perspective on making film. You have taken all of this and you've infused it with a specific cultural framework through which you tell your stories. That specific cultural framework has been good to you, which speaks to the fact that it can work. We don't have
Yeah.
to be chasing their stories, we can tell our stories. You have then, in business terms, created brand partnerships. This is what we've all learned today listening to you. You've created brand partnerships which have also been favorable. And instead of fleeing the country and buying a place in Beverly Hills and trying to live the American lifestyle, which, by the way, there's no problem with that if that's your thing, but
Absolutely.
I'm saying you've chosen to stay in culture, in your home base, with your people, and you have created something which I must say sounds, looks, apparently is magnificent. And I'm waiting for an invitation. But at some point, I'd like you to, if you would, roll out what this is that you've created.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it all started with the fact that, you sleep and especially with social media, you sleep and you wake up and you check your phone, and then you see like 20 messages from young people who believe that their future is in your hands. And they'll be like, I just woke up and I saw you in my dream, and something is telling me you're the only one who can get me to achieve my dream. And hey, and I felt we need this ecosystem where uh, different people with different mindsets and all of that can come together, share ideas, and all. That was how it started. And we started in Lagos with a cultural hub called CAP Hub. And CAP means Kunle Afolayan Production Hub. Now, within CAP Hub, we have a cinema, a 120-seater cinema, where we're like, okay, sometimes we want to do, we were curating films, and we have a film club, and just like all those ones you have in Soho and
Mhm.
stuff, we have the same kind of thing. We have restaurants, we have bar, we do live band, we have a school, an academy. We started a school where we train young people, different kind of people in film. So it's a one-stop shop for creatives, even musicians, visual artists, everybody comes there. It's in Ikeja. and in Cap Hub, and our restaurant is now one of the most, loved restaurants, on the mainland in Nigeria. It's called Afolayan restaurant, and it's within the Cap Hub. Now, when the idea, or rather when the pitch to do Anikulapo started, we knew we couldn't do it in Lagos because we wanted to create Oyo Empire 16th centuries, And I thought, look, let's go far out. And the first place that came to mind was my mother's hometown. In fact, I'm in Kapov right now, sorry, Cap Village right now, in Oyo State. And we came down, we saw the topography, and I felt this really fit into what we wanted to do. And the idea was to build small sets and all. Fast forward, today we have Cap Film Village and Resort. It's set on like 60 acres. And within Cap Village, we have sets that we built just like what Tyler Perry is doing in Atlanta. We have we have soundstage, but we also have physical sets, that we've built. But beyond that, we have almost 100 room accommodation, of different class and different category. And that is why it's called Film Village and Resort. So now people come here and they lodge and they take a tour of the set, and they also do hiking, and they, sometime by the end of the month, we are doing something with the government of your state where we're going to have 160 young people come and do residency program here. And they're going to be here, they're going to be trained by tested and trusted hands. Right. I'm always, like in our curriculum, I remember when I wanted to start a school, I'm always saying that there is a topic that is not taught, outside, and it's called business of film. Yes. And the business of film from Nigerian perspective is completely different from the business of film from the European perspective. It's different from the business of film from Hollywood perspective. So in our school, I teach business of film. I teach directing and so many of all those other, but business of film, it's something that I know like my palm, and I like to like teach all these young people, what, if you want to see it as a trade, this is where the path you should toe. And then if you want to see it as art, and then if you want to see it as art and commerce, like I see it, then this is the path, to follow. So Cap Film Village is here to stay, and we've been getting like inquiries from people from different part of the world who are trying to shoot in film in Nigeria, because once you're here, your accommodation, your feeding, everything can be taken care of. I'll tell you what, my brother, what we've managed to build, the funding and everything is from what we have made.
Can I pause you for just a second there? Because yeah. I just want to. So essentially, your Netflix series of films that you've done, they are now shot on essentially your studio, which is part of the larger complex that is Cap Village.
Yes.
With restaurant, with accommodation, with obviously studio, educational spaces. Yeah. I'm underscoring this because this is so so phenomenal and yet so phenomenally unusual. I can't really think of another example of this on the continent, with all of the elements that we've spoken about, and especially African owned. Also, the bigger thing here is that this is what you have used your profit from filmmaking to do. This isn't, I worked as an investment banker, made money that way, and I built this. So there is something here that needs to be analyzed, replicated and truly studied, and certainly from my perspective, celebrated. So thank you so much for that blueprint. Like you, I feel the weight of time with two at least generations behind me looking to me as the successful uncle to open the doors. So I get that. I'm I have a question for you about Cap Village, which is that I see people like Jacques Constant here, who runs the Haitian International Film Festival here in Los Angeles. And I see other individuals who belong to different companies, etc. What is the potential for setting up relationships in that diaspora wide way to accomplish a couple different things? I What does it look like in terms of, you've got something like the Haitian International Film Festival, which could be able to, your students, when they make their films, have
Yeah.
exit point to get into festivals which we have relationships with and have their best interest. The African Artists Association, as an LA-based organization, can help facilitate some activity, conversation around these films. And I'm wondering also, in terms of the young people that you're training, have aspirations that oftentimes are global. And what is the possibility of individuals, those of us, I see Raz, as I've mentioned, there's Francis
Yeah.
and myself, there's so many of us that have a wealth of information that can avoid the pitfalls that we continually see at the African Artists Association, where people make a film, come to LA, maybe for the Pan African Film Festival, and then are stuck. They don't have the money to afford an LA publicist, and they don't know. So I'm talking about connecting the dots here, and I want to get your thoughts on, is that possible? And also, what might be some of the issues or things to look at to best facilitate such an initiative?
Okay. Again, one of the reasons why we build this stuff really is the original motive is it's tied to legacy. I I always say to people that right now, all I want is keep making films, impacting, and like enjoy myself. Um, I've been discussing with my team, and what we've been saying is we need to have like 1 or 2 annual events, that will be happening here. For
Absolutely.
example, most of the students that have gone through the school, um, they 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 made films, and whenever it is we're doing graduation, we use our theater.
Well, we had a nice run, but it looks as though we've got the gremlins in the system for the first time. You're back, sir.
Okay, so like I said, some of the students that have gone through the school, they they typically would do their screening, in using the cinema, and some of them have also made films, and whenever it is they want to do premiere, they come to us, and then we help facilitate that. And beyond that, there are some good films that I've seen, and we personally promise them. We give them what's it called, scholarship, or grant towards their next film. All they need to do is submit and all of that. But this is something interesting. The space is available. We can look at how to partner,
Mhm.
and do like some a collaboration of mutual benefits, that will help us keep the narrative going. I am For me, look, all I'm about is Africa, is Nigeria, is art and entertainment. And since God has been good to us, we've built an ecosystem. We didn't build it for us. we can't even you can't even enjoy life alone. So we built it so that we can bring and involve other people of like minds, and that is what we're about. We made 3 films. We're about to start a web series this month. We made the Anikulapo film here. We made Ijogmo, which is another Netflix, commission film here. There are this resort, is centered around 3 towns. So we're surrounded by 3 other towns, and then we've made the first season and the second season and third season of the series just here. So but again, when we started making the first season in 2022 or 21, we didn't have one room accommodation. We were staying in town in other people's houses and the small hotels. And I'm like, no, this cannot be a one-off. We need to continue this, meaning we have to start planning our own accommodation. And this is what has given birth to exotic type of accommodation. If you check, capfilmvillageandresort.com, you get to see the type of facilities, that we have here, Cap Film Village and Resort. And it's open to everybody. People are already booking to come here Christmas. Organizations are doing their retreat here. Diplomatic community have been coming here. So it's film is given birth to by a film, what's it called, ideas. But then it's turned to something bigger than just film. So it's really an ecosystem.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward for sure to having this conversation about what value we as a community would be able to bring to this facility. And of course, having that reciprocity in the relationship. I'm also looking to see if there were any questions in the chat. Lots and lots of comments. One of the things that is quite sad about the Zoom process is, Kunle, you don't get to really see firsthand the applause, the comments, the love that you're receiving right now. There's a lot going on in the chat. I don't see too many specific questions. I'm
May I
looking
say
at.
something?
Yes, absolutely.
My name is Keith Shiri. I wanted to say something which is quite interesting.
Brother
Because
Keith, how are
and
you, sir?
I didn't
just
know you were there, brother.
Oh, wait, Keith. Before you speak, Keith, I have to introduce you from the perspective of Keith Shiri is one of the. I don't want to call him an elder because he looks like a spring chicken, but he is
No, I'm
one.
an elder. Let
He
me
is
tell
one
you,
of the
I'm a very elder.
one
Look
of
at my
the
beard.
elders.
Look.
One of the elders in our community who has been pushing the boundaries and the potentials of African cinema internationally for years, for decades. Love Keith. He's always there for us. And Keith, whatever you have to say, please take
enough of me. I mean, this is a stage for Kunle. I mean, one of the things that I like about Kunle is that he doesn't take the whole story about himself. When he introduced about his journey from Irapada when I first met him, and then when he came to, when I did say to him, listen, this installation, United States, you can do it. This woman in the galleries. And because I remember somebody says to me, Africans don't understand abstract art.
Yeah.
So it means that it's like, because from what I saw, the face, connection with Kunle with this film, he understood about form without having this kind of education behind, but he presented something what really got me to understand this clarity coming from Kunle, coming from the idea that he understands the kind of construction about ownership of your own grammar, about visuals. At the end of the day, I was born in Zimbabwe. I mean, I came from a country, I always say to a lot of people, I was born in a country called Rhodesia, what supremacist country, where nothing else happened, but you were kind of fed into these B movies from Hollywood. So when we were fighting the independence of our country, one of the elements that Robert Mugabe, like it or not, he was addressing the issue that make sure that Hollywood is your nightmare, right? So the kind of the nightmare of John Wayne about everything else, Tarzan coming to, so you have to disrupt that kind of conversation in the continent. Not only that, but all those spaces that they kind of deliberately left for you to kind of dominate you by using the images, visuals that are not, again, so that you don't emulate what they're about. Defeat those images, defeat your representation, and find a different way of retaining your grammar and the vocabulary in art, cinema, and literature. And that when we started engaging with, artists from Nigeria, reading literature from Ben Okri's and art from Oshobo and everything else, and meeting people like Kunle, for example, really reimagine the spaces that, of course, coming from his father, kind of these films that they were doing there was that kind of gap. Looking at my younger brother, I remember we traveled to Japan, for example. He forgets about that. He was a superstar in Japan. Just because kind of we spent time, we were in most little corners about, and I think that one of the latest presentation of Kunle, the same format, when he was in First Park, I was so inspired by Kunle's kind of idea that he's actually created something that makes sense. That's why we are all connected right now here. And I think that, and for me personally, because I want him to come to London, I mean, I did tell him, I mean, we are committed to get him to come to London to really kind of go back again to the journey. The last time we had a very, very kind of a good discussion when he said to me, Keith, I'm so fed up with what, how the gatekeepers stop,
Yeah.
they're
The conversation
gatekeepers,
we were having here, yes.
the gatekeepers are stop, and I'm going to create my own, space. And that's what is necessary. Let's all, roll our sleeves. And I think that what Kunle is presenting to all of us is so original. He's presenting something so original, which is in sync with his own realities. And he's very generous enough to be able to do that, to share with everyone else. As much as I also want him to make films, I want him to make more films so that everyone kind of like run the business side of it. And then I think that is aesthetic, and I don't want that to kind of suddenly Kunle has to kind of, that's it.
Well, Keith, I think there's something quite funny about you being told that Africans don't understand abstract when you come from Zimbabwe with the Shona artwork and all the range of history. But back to Kunle, and thank you for that, Keith, for sharing, because Kunle, you are guilty as charged. There is a level of humility that you exude that is beautiful, but that we are going to coax more of your stories out of you in due course. We're pretty much out of time. I'm looking at the question sheets here. There are very few questions, lots of comments. There are a couple things that I'd like to do. One is just, Kunle, as a final question, just ask you, it's very clear what you're doing, but is there an overall vision? Is there something that you'd like to add, to say, but is there a vision that you have for the African the African continent's film and cinema industry? Is there something that you'd like to share at all in any way?
Well, I'm just gonna, first of all, I want to appreciate everybody who's been here from the beginning and those who join, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us, ramble. But I just would want to say that look, the future is bright, but then you have to stay true to yourself. Raz Doti, by the way, that's my brother. When I made my first film, and I came to LA and he came to Nigeria, we used to talk. So, bros, I see you. Well done. I talked about gatekeeping, and I know that you guys have access to some of these brothers that are big there, Look, however it is they want to look at it, home is home, and this is home, right? And I mentioned earlier, Chiwetel has done stuff here. But there are other, someone like Jimmy, who is from 80. Jimmy is always here. It's not because he's not working or he's not busy, but then most times, maybe it was the first film that I got to speak with his agent. But after all of that, we discuss everything and then we get the film done, and we will travel all over the world, even with the films, and all. And that's what I call brotherhood. And I think that is how to actually build, you know, so I'll just encourage some of our brothers. I know that, and the world is changing. The world is changing, and they can bring their expertise and contribution to the development of the entire continent. But then, look, without all of that, we still can make it happen. For me, I'm very open to co-production. By the way, Golden Effect is a parent company, and we do rent equipment. We have our own studios, we have our own equipment, we have our own location, and then we're very good at sourcing hands, best hands, to make things happen. We try to, we try to kill bureaucracy and all of that. We just like to go straight into, do I believe in what you do? Do you like my face? Even if you don't like my face, but then if I believe you have something, we can always come together, partner, and then, make it happen. Cinema is everything to me. And that is why I have built everything to support, cinema, art, and entertainment. And like my brother Kid mentioned, I mean, they've invited me to London in November. So if you're in the UK, you can come and attend the masterclass. I'm going to be facilitating a masterclass in London in November. But again, I'm going to be in Yale University first week in November. I think third. I'm going to be speaking there. I'll put the details on the WhatsApp group at some point. So for those who are in the US, we can see there as well. So yeah, that's it from me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that is going to, I'm just going to be fair. There's been everyone listening here. I'm just trying to make sure that there are no questions. Francis, did you see any questions in the chat that I missed while I was talking?
I know there's Adriel sent a question to you directly, but I don't know if she's still here.
To me directly? I don't.
In the chat. Check your chat.
Yeah, I'm
Is
sorry.
Adriel here? What's unmute and ask your question?
Yeah. Is there a?
Oh, I did. I put it in the chat. Hi. I guess it didn't send. I actually was just curious to know, Kunle, about the Film Academy that you're doing in building this and this ecosystem in Nigeria, which seems really cool and exciting. How do you see this relationship between creative ownership, because I know that's the really big conversation, and cultural identity, and just the economic empowerment of shaping the future of African cinema?
Well, when we started, one of our first partner, was actually MasterCard Foundation, and this was because we're not just an organization or institution that is being set up to just train. We are a film production company, meaning we can train, groom, empower, and employ. So we're not just creating education, we're also hiring, creating jobs, for, those that, a lot of people who will pass through the school. Right now, as we speak, I know that between 3 years ago when we started and now, we have some permanent staff who were sourced through the school. You just need to show or prove that you know what you're doing. And with this program we're about to do, end of the month, we're going to be having 160 students, and they're gonna make their own short films, and from there we could also discover like a lot of new young talents, who are the future, so we're not gonna stop, because right now we're stuck. I mean, like I said, what got us here in the first place is film, and this has expanded to something bigger than us. And just like my brother mentioned earlier, we could have diverted these funds to buying yachts or buying houses in Beverly Hills. But again, I won't blame my brothers who are there. We almost survive, and all. But for some of us, this place, Nigeria is such a beautiful place, and if you just need to come and take your own, and then put it back. You need to, and that is what I'm doing, and I know that a lot of us can do it. So again, like I said, we're very open to collaboration of different types. If you have ideas, and I don't, again, like I said, I love Nigerian stories. I don't mind cross-border or cross-country kind of stories. It doesn't even have to be a Nigerian story. It can be a story set in Congo. It can be a story set in in Seychelles. It can be, but as long as it's something that all of us, and I mean not just the front of the camera. It could be behind the camera. It could be ideas. It could be, we all can like form a team and create stuff that will be of mutual benefit to all of us.
Fantastic.
I know it's quite late over there for you.
No, I'm good. I'm a filmmaker.
Thank you for staying up. Huh?
I said we're filmmakers. We don't sleep.
Right.
Exactly.
There is one question someone keeps clicking here. I don't know how your time is. I just want to ask you. I mean, someone asks how we watch films today with the advent of social media. I mean, do you believe the new age of social media is affecting the way we watch films today? So,
well, of course, that's an obvious.
That's right.
Affecting it. Look, it's hard for me to watch film on the phone.
Yeah.
Not just because I'm a filmmaker, but I don't know, I can't. It's very difficult. I can count how many times I've seen films on a laptop, except I'm stuck somewhere where I really can't access big screen, or I can access, here in Cap Village, we still do outdoor cinema. And
Wow.
we have like 2 RVs, where sometimes we just project, into the RV, and we do that a lot here all the time. But again, technology is the future. So there's really nothing we can do about it, but use it to your advantage. You might, if you're in a situation where you need to review something and you need to attend to it quickly, you can always get that done on the phone. But then, if you want to enjoy cinema, no, come on, I don't think it should be on the phone.
Well, is there anything we at the African Artists Association can do or continue to do to support what you do and, help you grow in everything you're doing? Please let us know, because we're here for you. I know it's been long overdue, like you said, and you always hammer my head wherever we be, LA, Toronto, London, wherever. You always like, hey, come home. But I'm getting there, brother. So, but I need to know if there's anything we can do on this side for the time being. Please let us know. And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much, guys. And I look forward to, seeing again. Raz, bro. Yeah, good one. I look forward to.
Before you go, sir, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have everyone unmute, and so that we can give you a proper voice send off. So I'll just take a moment.
And video.
Nothing but love, bro. Nothing but love,
video.
bro. Kunle, so proud of you, bro. I've seen the evolution, man, of Cap Studios. I know there's more to come, bro. Continued success. I love you, bro.
Thank you.
Feel Feel free to unmute and we'll just give our brother a round of applause and some love, man.
I just want to say thank you so much. This is great work. We would love to have films from your film school. We're here in LA, and we'll love to like teach there and support the work. So
Yep.
thank you.
Thanks, Kunle. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kunle.
Man, I'll see you in London soon. I'll see you in London.
Thank you, Rodney. You're a wonderful
Thank
moderator as
you.
well.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Afolayan.
It's you, bro.
Take care, brother.
Have a great night rest.
Let the man get some sleep.
Yes, please.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye now, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Rodney. Appreciate you, brother. Raz.
Great job, Rodney. Fantastic, sir.
One love, Raz. Good
Oh,
to
definitely,
see you.
man. Definitely. Francis, as always. Oga.
My guy.
Bye. Good job.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you all in person soon. Hey, Niger Fest 2025, October 10th. Come on out. Free event.
Thank you.
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
Bye.
You did a great job, Rodney, moderating. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Oh, thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye, Robbers. We'll talk later.
Okay. Peace.